Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such an amazing place to live, work, and play. Hey, we have a good guest today. Before we get to our guest, I want to do a quick review. This is playing Monday. We're actually taping this right after the elections because that's when Austin Golding, who we'll be talking to shortly, was available. But I wanted to, it gives me an opportunity actually to reflect a bit on the shows that we've had over the past week. And I mean, it's been really terrific. I mean, just a string of great guests. I want to continue to give my kudos to Craig Ray from Visit Mississippi. He's doing such a great job leading the tourism focus in this state. If you missed my conversation with Craig, you can go to the SuperTalk Gulf Coast Facebook page or your favorite podcast, or to the SuperTalk Mississippi YouTube page and watch it. But we covered a lot of ground, including the real opportunity internationally to bring people into coastal Mississippi. It was just a great conversation. We also actually talked about Jerry Lee Lewis and his recent death and what he meant to Mississippi, and the opportunity to have him engaged in a conversation around the country music marker that is at its place now in North Mississippi. Just a great story. We had a terrific conversation with Jamie Miller, from the new president and CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council. Jamie comes to the Business Council from the Mississippi Development Authority, but he had a stint as the leader of the Department of Marine Resources here on the coast. He was chief of staff for Congressman Palazzo along the way. I mean, he just has a great background. I had the opportunity to work with him when I led the oil recovery efforts for Governor Riley after the oil spill in Alabama. So he's bringing all this great experience back into coastal Mississippi. So if you missed that conversation, you ought to go back and take a look at it. It's a very disclosing discussion about leadership and his preparation for this really important position, and others. I should also point out that my conversation with Matt McDonald and Michelle Menningman was really terrific. I had the opportunity to go spend some time with them during the Judd's concert and see what goes on behind the scenes. And it was a really eye-opening experience for me. And we talked about it. We talked about what it takes to build a strong Coliseum. They don't have a bunch of tax dollars coming to the Coliseum. They're like an entrepreneurial effort. They have their own revenue and expense income statement, and they got to make it work. Even during the pandemic, they were able to get some help like other businesses were able to get. But at the end of the day, they have to be innovative and entrepreneurial and driven. And what they're doing at the Coliseum is truly remarkable, and it is another reminder of this incredible economic engine we have here in coastal Mississippi. Awesome conversation. So if you missed that conversation with Matt McDonald and his number two, Michelle Menningman, I would really encourage you to go take a look at it. So now let's shift gears, and I want to move over to my friend Austin Golding. He's the president and CEO of Golding Barge Line in Vicksburg. They have a real unique, if you've heard our conversations before, they have a real unique sort of perspective on things, because they send all kinds of petrochemical components throughout the inland waterways of the United States, and have great relationships with refineries and oil companies and a myriad of other companies. And Austin's in a really unique position to sort of get a sense of the lay of the land. He's often on national media programs to talk about his unique view. He's young and bright and a great leader here in Mississippi. And he's coming to us from Vicksburg, which incidentally is extremely low. The Mississippi River is extremely low. We're going to talk about that too. Austin, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Exciting watching a lot of these political results come in. So I'm watching this low water roll by. So it's interesting times we're living in.
Yeah, you posted a picture on Facebook or Instagram that I saw, and man, it's incredibly low. I mean, really low. And I told you, I hunt at least once a year over at Kings Point, and we usually sit on the front porch looking out over the Mississippi River. It's going to be interesting to be there this year to see it firsthand. But that's not the story, as you've made sure we understood. What the story is what's happening north, what's happening up further north for the Mississippi River. Why don't you give people a sense of just how challenging it is?
Well, I think, from an all-time perspective, north of Vicksburg, between Rosedale, Mississippi, and really Cairo, Illinois, it's as low as it's ever been. We got a little relief from this weather that came through the last couple of weeks, and It looks like we're probably on the good side of this issue. But the interesting thing is, we're going to be just above critical stage probably through December, and making plans to operate that way into the spring. So I don't think we get any normalcy until springtime, and we could be talking about extended low water operations for a while. But the challenging part is you have to decide how much cargo to put on your barges to see how deep they draft, and how many barges you carry to see how wide or long you are to be able to sneak through some of these really tight spots.
Well, what you said the last time we were together here on Coast Vue is that what used to take 4 barges now takes 5. Is that still the scenario, or is it worse than that?
No, it actually did get worse than that, but now we're probably back in that range. I would say in 2 weeks that's going to be a little bit better metric. We're probably going to raise drafts another foot in 2 weeks. But it'll, if we don't get any more rain, it's probably going to fall back out. They also shut a lot of the flow off of Missouri in mid-December every year to rebuild, to hold those reservoirs. So we lose a little flow on the upper when it comes to December. So that'll have to be offset by some water. But, we're in a situation, and you mentioned some of the national media spots. For some reason, everybody wants me to beat up on the Corps. They've done a remarkable job. I mean, we're operating at a very, very reliable level right now in historic low water. So you talk to the guys, when we talk to them out there, the river's actually in pretty good shape. The tough part of these ports and these docks and some of these ingress egress spots, but the Corps has done a great job of keeping us going.
So you're able to navigate. That's essentially what you're saying. And they have a real responsibility. Not only people tend to think of the Corps as flood control, but gosh, their responsibilities on the Mississippi River are so critical. When for people who don't think much about this, talk about sort of the economic role that the Mississippi River plays, not just in America, but around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw really the center of our country be the growth of our country economically, and most of our major cities are on something that is a maritime focus that feeds that economic engine locally and gives them a kind of an export window to the rest of the world. So what we really do in this country on the Mississippi River is gather all of our agricultural products that are going to be for export, get them to market via this inland superhighway. We also carry a lot of materials that go into construction, whether it be steel or concrete material construction, port to port. We carry a lot of our energy products like we do in a very efficient manner within the center of our country. And it allows places that are not coastal to have a international market come in and out of their region. And, it's a real blessing because one economic expert that I like to listen to, Peter Zehan, brings out a good point. Russia, a lot of their maritime focus flows north into the Arctic. It does not flow south into different markets, into warmer weather, into larger oceans or gulfs. So they're really restricted from a maritime sense. On the opposite side, China has a long, centuries-old maritime history that's added a lot of their sustainability and a lot of their stability when it comes to economics. So I think that America's benefit is you have obviously 2 coasts to go global with our markets, but we have a main vein right down the center of our country that allows for a quick export and an expedient inter-country economy that can be used and sustained.
Yeah. Something we haven't talked about before, just to kind of give people a sense of the scope of your company. Is there a sort of a war room or a planning room or a logistics room that you can go in and literally see all your boats and at one time up on a map moving around? And if we were to, whether you have it or not, if we were to look at such a thing, what would it reveal about where your boats are now?
Sure. Oh, no, we have multiple monitors right outside my office here at our logistics area. We also have a windowless kind of focus room where we meet and do a lot of meeting really in the morning. That's game planning and a response meeting later. But if you looked at the map, if you pull back and looked, we would have today 8 vessels that are between Lake Charles and Louisiana and Brownsville, Texas. We'd have 8 vessels between New Orleans and Panama City, Florida. we would have around 10 vessels between Baton Rouge and St. Louis, Missouri, and then some singular vessels around the Arkansas and then the Tennessee Valley and then the northern Alabama and kind of along the 10 time. So it's a true national operation. We were in Chicago last month, and we've gone to Pittsburgh before. We've gone to Oklahoma before. So you never really know.
That's incredible. What a business right there in Vicksburg. Hey, when we come back on the other side, I want to talk about a conversation that we had offline, Austin and I had offline about America's energy policy, something we continue to talk about here on Coast Vue. But this war against energy companies is not leading us in a good place. We'll see you after this break with more from Austin Golding. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have Austin Golding from Golding Barge Line. He is it's a privately owned business in Vicksburg, and they do significant, especially around mostly petrochemical. Now, do you do other than petrochemical, Austin?
We do, and one of the Gulf Coast area's best businesses is one of our biggest partners in our rock business, Warren Paving.
Yeah,
we move a lot of rock for Stephen Warren and his outfit, and a lot of rock goes into the Moss Point area and around the Pascagoula area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not surprised to hear that because you guys are, again, logistically all over the place as it relates to inland waterways of Mississippi and beyond, I might add. So, you and I had a chat the other day. Once again, you saw the president. Again, this is not a political statement. It lands as a political statement simply just because when you move from a Republican administration to a Democratic administration, then back again, that pendulum is constantly swinging, and it's hard to manage energy policy in 4-year increments. That's just the reality, or even eight year increments. But more recently, Biden sort of once again chided energy companies for having too high profits, without noting that there are other times when they have very low profits. Their pendulum swings constantly as well. But you and I sort of chatted back and forth and essentially agreed that really is not helping. I mean, at a time when energy companies, we rely on them to sort of help us figure out what's going to be the best path forward as we move toward renewables. Because even I don't care which oil company you're talking to, they understand that the future is renewable. What there's vast disagreement about, particularly on the political front, is what that transition should look like or how long it should take. We're not going to get to all electric vehicles overnight. We're not going to get to all wind overnight. There's a reality here that we've got to get our arms around. And for whatever reason, we are just pushing the polarizing ends on this. Let's talk about that first and how that probably makes you crazy, and then we'll shift gears and say, as it relates to this outcome, which probably will mean that we have a split House and Senate and more of a gridlock scenario. How you think that might help us find the middle ground, which we need to be able to find as it relates to energy. But let's talk about the first. When you hear that chiding against the energy companies, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I think it's purely political. I don't think it's based in any kind of practicality. I mean, that administration knows that these are not patriotically based companies. These are privately held companies that a lot of time have international interests at the wheel, and they're going to sell their products at a global market. They don't really care, anything about domestic policy. Now, I'll say they care about it when it comes to their investment. And today, when they decide to sell that product to somebody for a certain price, that decision about what kind of cost barrier they have to get over to create a profit is severely impacted by decisions that are punitive towards the oil and gas industry. So you're seeing refineries come offline. You're seeing substantial infrastructure divestment. You're seeing not a lot of new investment in growth or startups around that industry. And, what's the solution? All right, we're complaining that he's attacking oil and gas, and there's a reason that they're maximizing profits, and there's not a refining capacity, and they're going to sell to the highest bidder. What's the solution? In my opinion, I think that there ought to be some kind of a minimum standard of operation for a refinery that if things slack off and you come down beneath that, there's a reaction, whether it either be a tax penalty or some kind of minimum standard enforcement. But if you operate at a higher margin and you maintain a maximum output, you get a tax break or some kind of incentive to try to make you continue to run up. And so when oil, falls out, the economy suffers. They keep making gasoline and diesel, and we get to enjoy $1 a gallon or $1 gas of diesel because the oil company's not out anything, and that savings gets passed on to us. Or we, see an economic pinch, they start shutting off valves, they start shutting off refining capability, and we have to pay $4 to $6 a gallon when things are already tough because they're feeling it too. So that would be my solution from a policy standpoint.
What's interesting, and that's definitely a tactical thing that can be done. I mean, if they could get alignment around that, and again, we'll shift gears and talk about what a more moderate legislative body might mean to a conversation like that. What's interesting about that, though, you've helped us understand that no matter what is done in terms of maximizing current refinery capacity, it's not going to be enough. That what we need is more capacity, and that what we saw after the pandemic is actually capacity being taken offline. And do you see any scenario where capacity is put back online?
I think you're going to see different capacity come online that's not necessarily making gasoline or diesel. I think you'll see a lot of ethylene, a lot of natural gas, a lot of other renewable diesel refinery capability come online. I think you could even see us start to create some more ammonia, some control more of our fertilizer horizon. But no, I don't see gas or diesel refining being expanded on unless there's some kind of commitment that this thing can amortize itself or, be profitable for 30 to 40 more years, because there's so much capital goes into keeping these things running that it doesn't make sense to capitalize for them to keep them running for 2 or 3 years and then have the rug pulled out from underneath you. The boom or bust that goes on in the oil field does not go on in the refinery world, and they're not going to be susceptible to that. And so they're going to slowly take things offline and not react to spikes from a capital cost standpoint, like the wildcatters or the oil wells will, or quite frankly, the barge business has in the past.
You saw Biden leading up to the election, as he was doing some last minute stomping for specific candidates, made the point along the way that we're not going to drill anymore. We're not going to drill anymore. What happens when the president of the United States makes that kind of statement?
I think beyond impacting drilling directly, it's a overture that he's not a fan. And so there's going to be other decisions that go on that aren't so public that are going to make it more difficult for me to be in the oil and gas business because he's not a fan of it. So I think the impression that it gives people is they're going cross current to what the regulators and the lawmakers are fans of if they invest in oil and gas. And that makes, especially when somebody has a lot of capital and they're presented choices, they're not all right, well, I'm going to choose something that's not as in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
So I think that's the bigger impact it makes.
Hey, when you're meeting with your cohorts, those that are in your business and those in the energy sector, when you're sitting down having a cup of coffee, how often does the snowballing effect of Russia come up in your conversations?
Mainly with the fertilizer guys. Lately, and I know this is a hot topic that I think you can get ahead of a little bit, this diesel shortage, the cascading effect of the diesel shortage will mirror what people have already lived through in the fertilizer world. So I think if people want to see what's the diesel shortage going to look like, look at what the patterns around the world when it comes to ammonia and UAN and different kind of nitrogen additives that is born out of Russia. See what kind of patterns those are going towards. The key here for Russia in our mind is what happens when when China comes out of their COVID lockdown policy, and all of a sudden now there's a run on Russian products that are probably the production in that part of the world in Russia has been ramped down. And is there enough business for India and China to keep pulling from Russia that'll keep Russian production up. Because if Russia cuts production because its only customers are India and China continues to see economic trouble, you're going to see the run on diesel from Europe and South America that's made here. And so if you want a gallon of diesel in Vicksburg or Biloxi, Mississippi, you better be willing to pay more for it than somebody in Sao Paulo, Brazil, or Denmark is willing to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the point you continue to make. We're dealing with global energy companies. These aren't companies that are just doing business in America, and America relies on them, and they rely on America. They're global companies, and they're always going to think like a global company, and resources are going to go where the opportunity is. That's just any business works that way.
It is, and there's, I think, as Americans, number one, we're narcissists. We think the world is only as we see it, and we're the biggest fish in the sea. So that's our world, and everybody else reacts to it. We're a big driver in the oil and gas world, but from a global standpoint, these companies are more. I've always made the analogy. They're more like professional golfers. They're going to play in the tournament that has the highest payout. They don't have to play in the NFL in this country. And so if you see an emerging economy come out that drives demand, or you see a faltering economy that's providing supply, that's how you get a diesel shortage. That's how you get a fertilizer shortage. And that's where we are with the Russia situation. Well,
the fertilizer shortage for me, I had the opportunity we buy a lot of nitrate for our farm, 3 farms that I lease up in the Delta, and it seems poor quality. It's got more of an ammonia smell to it. It's just not what it used to be. Hey, listen, we'll pick up on the other side when we meet again in a few weeks and talk more about the political situation after it's kind of played out a little bit. It's been a pleasure, Austin, to visit with you this morning.
Hey, thank you, Ricky. All my best, and y'all have a great week.
You bet. This has been Austin Golding from Golding Barge Line, and we'll see you after this break.